This is macOS Ken.
Another look at iPhone 15 orders, a big thing Evercore is not worried about, and a look at Monday's OS updates. It is Tuesday, the 19th of September, 2023. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from macOS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well. Go to greenchef.com/60MOK and use code 60MOK for 60% off plus free shipping. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSCan. Goldman Sachs seems to be liking the lack of iPhones. Apple Insider ran a write-up of the bank's iPhone pre-order reaction. Quoting the bank's note, although we recognize that there are caveats to extrapolating delivery lead times to consumer demand, we're encouraged by what appears to be strong demand, particularly against the backdrop of heightened competition from Huawei in China. Why focus on China? Well, partly because it's China, and partly because that country is really feeling the pinch. Despite the fact that most iPhones are made in China, the Goldman note says by region, mainland China is experiencing some of the longest lead times across Pro and Pro Max. Surprising no one, the Pro end of the line is doing better than the consumer side, though there is one surprise at the consumer end. Quoting the note one more time, the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max are seeing the longest lead times across all regions, while the iPhone 15 and iPhone 15 Plus are generally seeing more normal lead times, with the exception of the iPhone 15 Plus in pink, which is seeing lead times of 4 weeks in the US. Goldman Sachs has a buy rating on Apple shares. Last time I saw it mentioned, the firm had a price target on the shares of $222. Now, before I even got to the part in the note about the pink iPhone 15 Plus, I was already considering the crazy difference that color can make. Checking iPhone 15 Pro Max availability on my own on Monday, blue titanium and black titanium in all available capacities still show delivery between the 17th of October and the 24th. Meanwhile, natural titanium and white titanium in all available capacities show delivery between the 7th of November and the 14th. And I couldn't help wondering, does this mean that everybody wants the lighter colors and nobody wants the dark? Or did Apple overproduce on one end and underproduce on the other? Apple Insider fell down a similar rabbit hole. Quoting that report, the chief and substantial caveat is that Apple has not released details of how many iPhones it has manufactured, and it never reveals how its figures break down by model. Consequently, it is entirely possible that, for instance, Apple made fewer of the pink iPhone 15 than other colors, and that is why it is sold out. As the site points out, we will never know why we're seeing what we're seeing. Either way, here in the States, you're waiting at least a month for an iPhone 15 Pro Max, and apparently for a pink iPhone 15 Plus as well. When Apple is asked about any supply-demand imbalance around its products, it tends to say, "We're working as hard as we can to get whatever product it is out to customers as soon as we can," or words to that effect. We seem to have gotten a peek behind that curtain Monday from TF International analyst Ming-Chi. Over the weekend, he indicated that extended waits were a result of both high demand and production issues. Now he thinks he spotted the kink in the supply chain. In a post to Medium on Monday, the analyst said the most significant supply bottleneck for the iPhone 15 Pro Max is currently the Tetraprism Compact Camera Module, or CCM, which is exclusively supplied by LG IT. To improve the CCM production yield, Apple has urgently increased the specifications of the Tetraprism lens, exclusively supplied by Largan, to address the CCM yield issues caused by assembly tolerances. That's apparently going to cost Apple a few extra bucks. According to the analyst, given the increased production challenges and the need to allocate more resources, the unit price of the Tetraprism lens has risen sharply by more than 20%. Curious. Does it make you feel better or worse when something happens with an Apple product that Apple itself doesn't seem to have seen coming? Anyway, it seems Apple is leaning on suppliers to work as hard as they can to get iPhone 15 Pro Max out to customers as soon as they can. From the Might Have Been Nice to Know file, news about iPhone 15 Pro. Now that a lot of you have probably already ordered one. A piece from MacRumors says the only way to record above 1080p at 30 frames per second on a 128GB Pro is if you're recording directly to an external drive. But MacRumors says, go 256GB or higher on the Pro or Pro Max, and ProRes video recording is supported in up to 4K quality at 60 frames per second using external or internal storage. Probably not a big deal. Chances are if you care about 4K quality at 60 frames per second, you are buying bigger storage or the Pro Max model anyway. And as the piece points out, the same limitation applied to the iPhone 13 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro models with 128GB of storage, only they didn't have the option to record straight to an external drive. So like for like, this is better than those. Still, might have been nice to know. Good news, no matter which 15 Pro phone you ordered, getting the back glass replaced on this year's model will be cheaper than on a 14 Pro should you need to do so. I told you last week that the Pro end of the iPhone 15 line had adopted the easier reparability features found in the consumer end of the iPhone 14 line. Like last year's consumer models, a piece from MacRumors said this year's Pro models feature a redesigned frame that allows for the back glass panel to be easily removed from the devices. Some expressed hope that that would mean less expensive repairs, and it does in fact mean that. Still not cheap, but it is cheaper. According to a piece from Cult of Mac, replacing the back glass on an iPhone 15 Pro without Apple Care Plus will run $169, down considerably from the iPhone 14 Pro price of $499. For iPhone 15 Pro Max, you're looking at $199, down from last year's $549. If you have Apple Care Plus, Cult of Mac says the service fee for back glass replacement remains unchanged at $29. There's been this thing going on in the background for the last week or so, sort of tied to Apple. The U.S. Department of Justice is suing search giant Google over possible antitrust violations. According to a piece last week from Apple Insider, the government accuses the search giant of abusing its power. A key component of the trial is said to be Google's dealings with other companies to be offered as a default search provider. That is where Apple comes in. While changing the search provider in Safari is really easy, search in Safari defaults to Google. Apple pays a lot of money for that default position. While it pays other companies to be their default search service as well, Apple is thought to be the biggest. Some have worried about the hurt that might put on Apple should Google be forced to change its ways. That brings us to a note posted Monday by Evercore analyst Amit Daryanani. Apple 3.0 ran part of that note. Bottom line, Daryanani sees no need to worry for now. First, while the trial is ongoing, a verdict isn't likely until early next year. If Google is found to have violated the law, the analyst figures you're looking at an appeals process that'll last 1 to 3 years. Here's the thing that seems most interesting to Daryanani, though. If Google can't pay for default search placement in Safari, other companies will want to. Quoting Darianani's note, we think Safari and iOS ecosystem are a strategic asset and are likely to become more strategic if search becomes a more competitive space, Bing, Google, etc. That said, we do see some potential risk from negative headlines as the trial progresses. Apple 3.0's Philip Elmer DeWitt had a couple of insightful comments on the note. While others may want to pay for the default search position, Elmer DeWitt can't see Apple making the same amount of money from anyone else that it makes from Google. As for negative headlines, though, he says Apple's probably seen worse. Evercore has an outperform rating on Apple shares. The firm's price target on the shares is $210. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, Green Chef. If you've tried HelloFresh, this is them but different. Green Chef is now owned by HelloFresh, bringing you a bigger selection of meal plans from which to choose. Green Chef makes eating well easy, with plans to fit every lifestyle. That's keto, paleo, vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, or people just looking to eat more balanced meals. I was really into the chicken with basil pesto I had last week. Foods I wouldn't know what to do with, like chard and fennel and dates, ended up making one incredible dish. Each Green Chef delivery features seasonal recipes, certified organic fruits and vegetables, and fantastic proteins. And they run the range, from dinners ready in 25 minutes or less, to 10-minute lunches, to grab-and-go lunches and snacks. Go to greenchef.com/60MOK and use code 60MOK to get 60% off plus free shipping. That's greenchef.com/60MOK and use code 60MOK to get 60% off plus free shipping. Every Green Chef meal I've had has been delicious. See what you think. Use code 60MOK to get 60% off plus free shipping at greenchef.com/60MOK. My oh my, how times have changed. The Slack chat I'm part of had people reminiscing on Monday. Remember when everybody used to be on iMessage saying, "Has iOS whatever shown up for you yet?" Nothing like that Monday. Well, not much like that. I did see one friend on Instagram say watchOS 10 showed up for them before iOS 17 showed up, which means they weren't able to update to watchOS 10 because, in that case at least, things have to go in a certain order. I decided I was going to be cool and wait until late Monday night, early Tuesday morning to update my stuff, and boy was I not patient enough for that. Updated my 2018 iPad, my iPhone 13, my Apple Watch Series 7, and my Apple TV 4K at around 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. A little later for the watch and TV since the watch had to be charged, and I kind of forgot about the TV. Your mileage may vary, but I had absolutely no problem with any of it. That said, I haven't had time to try everything out yet. Like I really wanted to try the accessibility feature, personal voice. Turns out though you gotta read out loud for like 15 minutes. Like I've got time to sit around reading out loud. Apple issued a few press releases Monday. Those reminded people that the new operating systems were out there and why they might want them. Fun and useful features in iOS 17 include personalized contact posters that show up when you call someone or when somebody calls you, live voicemail that offers a real-time transcription when someone's leaving a message so you can pick up or let the machine keep listening, AR-enabled effects in FaceTime and supported third-party video apps, the safety/peace of mind feature check-in, a better dictation experience, Standby, which turns your iPhone into a bedside alarm clock plus, and a whole lot more. There's less for Apple to crow about with iPadOS 17. It's not that it's bad, it's just that a lot of the features are features that are also found in the iOS update. For example, you can use continuity camera to initiate FaceTime calls through Apple TV. You can create live stickers by pulling subjects from photos. The Health app has made its way to iPad. Specific to iPad, there are customizations for the lock screen and widgets that work from the lock screen or from the home screen. Some features, like autofill for PDFs, are due out later this year. For watchOS 10, if you're like me, you are going to hate these changes for about a minute. You access apps by pushing the digital crown now. You access Control Center by pushing the side button under the crown. Turning the crown one way brings up the Smart Stack, as does scrolling from the bottom of the screen. Scrolling from the top of the screen still brings down your list of notifications. And changing the watch face is really hard to do by accident these days. To do that, you press and hold the middle of the watch face. Once it recedes, you can scroll right or left for whatever face you want. I am not a fan of change for the sake of change. These changes don't feel like that. They kind of feel better. Going back to the listicles, Apple's Quick Read for tvOS 17 highlights the operating system's redesigned Control Center. The special lady friend is already a huge fan of that. There's the Siri remote locator, the enhanced dialogue function, and more. We did give FaceTime through Apple ID a go using our iPhone 13s. Seemed to work well, though we were both in the same room, which put us a hair's breadth away from serious feedback. No eardrums were ruptured for this experiment. Not garnering a press release from Apple on Monday with the latest firmware for HomePod, MacRumors wrote up a few of the smart speaker's new features. According to the piece, users can now start an AirPlay session from iPhone or iPad straight to the HomePod by telling Apple's virtual assistant to do it, which is great for playing audio that's not supported directly by HomePod. New call controls let users mute or unmute a call on HomePod. People take calls on HomePod? And second-generation HomePod gets enhanced dialogue when paired with Apple TV 4K. Coming soon. Maybe already there. A firmware update for AirPods Pro 2. I say maybe already there because you know how those are. Charge them up, hope for the best. This is another one for which Apple did not issue a press release, though 9to5Mac outlined a few new features coming to the stoppers. No new hardware required. Features listed by the site include adaptive audio, conversation awareness, mute or unmute, personalized volume, automatic switching, and more. Charge them up. Hope for the best. And finally today, remember a couple of years ago when Apple forsook skeuomorphism for the vast flatness that became its new design language? No, you don't, because it wasn't a couple of years ago, or even a few. It was 10. 10 years. 10 years ago. 10 years ago yesterday, to be exact. Cult of Mac reminded us all how old and brittle our bones have become in its Today in Apple History feature. September 18th, 2013, iOS 7 launches with a radical redesign that divides the tech world. You can read about it if you want to, or just remember the good old days. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go chase kids off my lawn. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well. Go to greenchef.com/60MOK and use code 60MOK for 60% off plus free shipping. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media. Online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.